For the year 2020 and 2021, the program expenditure amounted to 15.763 million for the COVID-19 related expenditure, out of which the actual utilization was 12.036 million. In 2020, a total amount of 11.162 million, this includes a cap, was programmed for COVID-19 related expenditure. Out of this amount, a total of 8.12 billion was utilized. The amount was utilized to provide support to households, supply equipment, and provide relief to health workers, health infrastructure, security operations, evacuations, quarantine and coordination, economic relief, stabilization and revitalization, and COVID-19 complementary releases. Mr. Speaker, a total amount of 4.6 billion was programmed in the 2021 budget for COVID-19 related expenses. At the end of 2021, total utilization was 3.9 billion, representing 85% utilization.
One particular one that is conspicuously missing in it is the COVID-19 Trust Fund that was established by the President of the Republic of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, that is critical because any amount that accrued to the fund is public fund, and it should be accounted as such. So far, from 2020 to December 2021, he has spent 12 billion of that money, 12 billion. What he has failed to do is to tell us that between the 19.3 billion and the 12 billion, the difference of 7.3 billion, where the money is and what they have used the money for. I call on you, Mr. Speaker, to set up an ad hoc committee so that we can bring the various heads of the MDAs, in particular, that spent the money, to account for this in detail.
Right. So you've been hearing some members of parliament, Kesela Toforcing, sharing their views on this. The minority has been saying that something does not just, add up if you look at the accounting that the finance minister did. But they are very happy that the finance minister appeared to want to ignore them until Parliament, put its foot down and insisted that if he did not show up to account for the funds, none of his business in his ministry will be attended to by Parliament. So they feel that they have done a good job by compelling him to show up there and account. The show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. And Fanat, Ghana, think wood, think Fanat. And so the minority has been saying, from what the minister presented, they compare that with the president's statement in March, specifically 30th March 2022, where the president said that 17.7 billion had been spent in containing COVID-19. They juxtaposed that with the minister saying that 12 billion was spent. Then they asked, but the finance minister received a total of 19 billion. So how does he account for the shortfall? They asked na Sikano Owahe. The president also said that 1.9 billion is what was spent for the mass reopening of schools after COVID hit and the shutdowns happened, the lockdowns happened. But the minister says 1.1 billion is what was used. So those are some of the highlights of the issues that the NPs had raised. Let's now find out what exactly the problem is, if there is indeed some problem. My guests have been Samuel Okudzeto, Blackwell North Tongue, MP for North Tongue and ranking member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, Dr. John Ampotua Kuma, MP Ejiso and Deputy Minister for Finance. Martin Pebu is a lawyer and rights activist. Kweku Enchibuesiakon is a Ghanaian citizen. He has asked to be excused, so he's left us. So thank you once again. Joining us for this second segment will be Kwame Sapong Esiedu, pharmacist and fellow, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, Ghana. Kwame, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning to your listeners.
All right, so let's begin to set the stage again. What exactly are your concerns, Sami?
Yes, so my concerns and the concerns of the NDC caucus in Parliament, I'll outline them under 5 broad categories. But let me quickly make a preliminary comment, which is that it should not have taken Parliament this stress, this arduous and strenuous campaign to get the finance minister to account for the biggest expenditure item probably in the entire history of our country. Look, if you look at our budget deficit for 2020, it's the highest in the sub-region, 15.2%, largely because of this COVID expenditure. Côte d'Ivoire did 5.5%, Togo 4.7%, Burkina Faso 5.4%, Benin 3.0%, DR Congo 1.3%, Tanzania 1.8%, Ethiopia 3.0%, Guinea 3.1%, Sao Tome and Principe 5.0%. You will not find this 15.2%, easily. So it's a huge fiscal imposition that COVID brought. And billions, not millions, of monies have been spent. So we should see a government that is willing and open to the idea of accountability. It shouldn't be this stressful. Look, the speaker had to even blacklist the finance ministry. That his business, he had brought a $1 billion loan. We had to put it aside. It was suspended. That it will not be approved. The finance committee should not even deliberate on it until this account is done. So I'm saying that preliminary observation, never again. But I am glad that this is also the democratic dividend from the kind of parliament we have. Hung parliament, a speaker who is not from the president's party. Sometimes we lose sight of some of the advantages we are getting from this current configuration. Remember that we had filed a motion earlier and the speaker was away. The first deputy speaker presided and he threw a motion away. There are 240 motion calling for a probe. It was thrown away. That would have been the end of the matter if we didn't have a speaker from a different party of the president. So it is very good.
But this was not a probe.
Yes,
but for him to come and answer questions.
Yes, but
maybe if the question it was for just answer questions, Joe Seusu may not have.
No, remember this was not a question. We asked him to come and the speaker directed that he should come and make a statement, a full statement, of expenditure.
So it's not the same as what Joe Seusu threw away.
Yeah, threw out. But at least now through this statement and the directive of the speaker has directed that the joint committees of finance and health should take this matter, delve into it, and present a report in October. So it's major progress.
Let me make this proper. When you go to court, sometimes we get our motions wrong, but the court sees the substance and then manages and gives you for justice to be done. So if Joe Seusu saw that, maybe the remit of the motion was too wide, you could have given something to advance our governance, but not throw it out.
Exactly. All right. Exactly. So let me quickly run through our 5 main concerns. The first one is the inconsistent figures with the total expenditure. If you look at Appendix 1 of the Finance Minister's presentation to Parliament this week, the Finance Minister is stating that the utilization is 8.1 billion. That is the utilization. However, if you take the 2021 budget presentation, the Finance Minister's own budget presentation, a copy of which I have here, page 274, utilization is provided here as 18.1 billion, not 8. A 10 billion CD difference is here. Utilization, page 274, 18.194 billion. How is it that months after, almost a year after, you are telling us it's 8.1 billion? Then you see, that is not all in the inconsistencies. You come to the president's message on the state of the nation. I have his address here. The president told us in his message, quote, "In all, data from the Ministry of Finance tells us that an amount of 17.7 billion or 4.6% of GDP has been spent in containing the pandemic since 2020. The president is saying 17.7 billion is what has been spent. But when you read the finance minister's statement, paragraph 19, page 7, he tries to give some rationalization, which doesn't really wash. This is what Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta said this week in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, I wish to dispel the notion that there have been inconsistencies in government data on COVID-19. His Excellency the President intimated during the State of the Nation address on 30th March 2022, we had mobilized. This is Ken Ofori-Atta introducing his own word. We had mobilized about 17.7 billion since 2022 to fight the pandemic. We have subsequently reconciled the data, and I can report that as end of May 2022, we have mobilized 18.19 billion to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. Again, when His Excellency the Vice President indicated on 7 April 2022 at the National TESCON conference that we have spent 8.1 billion in 2019, the context was within expenditure for 2020. Again, this paragraph 19 is loaded with inconsistencies and dishonesty. Look, the message of the State of the Nation is here. The president chose his words carefully. He said, we have spent, not mobilized. We have spent 17.7 billion, not mobilized. Then on the finance, the vice president, I have the vice president's speech here, page 29 of his speech. Look at the table.
Which speech?
Table 5, the TESCON speech in April. 7th April, the TESCON conference. Go to page 29 of that speech. It is under the table 5, expenditure on exceptional items 2018 to 2021. Ken Ofori-Atta is telling us at paragraph 19 that the finance minister, vice president was talking about 2020. The table heading is that 2018 to 2021.
And vice president was talking when?
In April 2022, 7th April 2022.
All right.
And the vice president says 2020, 2021, 8.1 billion. The vice president was not referring to only 2020. So the contradictions are just mind-boggling. And you see, if you look at the gaps, so in terms of actual utilization, Ken Ofori-Atta is saying 12 billion. The president has told us earlier 17.7 billion. That's a gap of 5.5 billion. If you present the vice president's own, who is the head of the economic management team, the gap is even wider, about 7 billion. So what is going on? Now, the second concern we have relates to the conflicting claims. You've alluded to one of them, school reopening. The president told us it was 1.9 billion. When you read the finance minister's document this week, finance minister says 1.1. That's a variance of 800 million. Where is that 800 million? You come to paragraph 341, page 74 of the 2021 budget. I have seen a number of expenditure items that we were provided with in Parliament in the 2021 budget approval, and they don't find any expression in what the finance minister has brought to Parliament. Where is the 13.9 million that we said we gave to Metromas and STC? Where is the 47.1 million that we say we gave to PSC Tema Shipyard and the Ghana Airport Company? At paragraphs 341, 342, page 74 of the 2021 budget. You go through the entire presentation, the accounting for the utilization at appendix 1 of the finance minister's presentation, that is not accounted for. Then you come to paragraph 361 of the 2021 budget. You notice that the government has set up this, what they call the CAPBAS, the Coronavirus Alleviation Program, Business Support Scheme. In the 2021 budget, what they tell us was utilized is 412.8 million. And yet, when you come to the finance minister's presentation to Parliament, Appendix 1, the finance minister claims that they use 600 million, a variance of 188 million. The finance minister's own document. You said that the CAPBAS, the Coronavirus Alleviation Program, 480 million is what you spent. Now you say 600 million. So which is which? 412 million and 600 million are not the same things.
So good to be asking for explanation, but must you immediately proceed to, impugn some, corruption there?
I'll come to that. I'm just concluding quickly. Then the funding sources. You see, my brother, if you take the mid-year review that Finance Minister presented to Parliament, 2021 mid-year review, you come to page 99. What the Finance Minister reported to Parliament is that all the monies that have come in to fight COVID, he provided two tables. Appendix 4B, 19.3 billion, and then added Appendix 4C, funding sources for the 2021 budget following the impact of COVID-19. And that is the World Bank, the Korea support, the Germany support. 6.2 billion. My brother, this 6.2 billion Ghana cedis is missing. So we contend that the actual funds that came in for us to fight COVID is 25.5 billion from the Finance Minister's own document, page 99 of the media review, 25.5 billion. But when you come to Appendix 3 of the Minister's statement to Parliament, he only provides the GOG funding sources and is silent on the World Bank funding. Remember that even this World Bank funding in the media review of $200 million, the World Bank country director, Pierre Laporte, in an interview with your colleague, Evans Mensah, said that what they actually gave government was $430 million and not $200 million, which was reported in the media review. So our projection of 12.5 billion Ghana cedis could even be more. So how is it that we are now being told that only 19.3 billion cedis came in? It simply doesn't add up. Let me also state that when you really look at...
We'll be sharing with our viewers some slides of the presentation, and you see the funding sources, including the external funding sources.
Yes.
IMF 5.85 billion, World Bank 1.33 billion, European Union 504 million, Ghana cedis, African Development Bank 5.65 million, the Bank of Ghana 10 billion, and the Government of Ghana Contingency Fund 1.2 billion, giving you a total of 19.30 billion. So you can follow. Yes, that's what you see there.
And we contend that that is not the entire picture, that the Finance Minister in the media review had provided a second table on the external funding which came in. World Bank, $200 million, Korea support an initial 65 billion, then another 30 million, then another 30 million from Korea, then Germany, 40 million euros. If you put all of that together, 6.29 billion. No mention of that. You don't find it in the Finance Minister's statement.
That's what we have projected.
Excellent.
So the source of this projection is the 2021 mid-year budget review, page 99.
So where is all of that money? The Finance Minister did not talk about it. Then
let me go to...
if I can get 30 seconds, please. The other concern we have is that when you go through the Constitution, Article 175 is clear on what is public funds. Article 175 says, the public funds of Ghana shall be the consolidated fund, the contingency fund, and such other public funds as may be established by or under the authority of an act of parliament. So when we ask you to come and account, the Finance Minister should have added the coronavirus trust fund established under Act 1013. He should have added it. There was no mention at all. And we know that there were many donations. The last time they accounted for in this budget, I think it was about 57 million. That was about a year ago.
Okay.
So these are major issues. And then finally, something.
Right. Thankfully, you say you are not satisfied. So the Speaker has said the joint committees should do a further work.
But I want to just conclude on the missed opportunities. I thought that all of this, about 25 billion, we saw young people come up with innovations, all these Incas groups, the ventilator manufacturers and all of that, beautiful engineering, ideas that came to the fore. I don't see how we supported them. Other countries, they have used this coronavirus as an opportunity to create businesses, to create industries. These test kits that young people came up with. We left them to dry in the cold.
Okay.
We didn't give them
in respect of the vice president's mention of 8 billion that you have an issue with, and you contrast with the figures of the president and Ken Ofori-Atta,
yes,
and then begin to make raise questions. This is the explanation I'm getting from the presidency, okay, that the vice president's figure on the COVID-19 expenditure of the 8 billion was only for COVID-related expenditure. The president, on the other hand, gave the total expenditure from the funds received in the name of COVID. Part of the total was used for budget support. So the vice president only talked about the part of the expenditure that went into specific COVID-19 related matters like PPEs. I suppose that explains to you, but John, John, let me go to John immediately. Yes, yes. So John,
yes.
How do you respond to what the minority point at that looks that there has been some discrepancies in the presentation?
Samson, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to say that there's been no discrepancies. But let me respond firstly to the initial comments of my brother Blakwa about the Speaker blacklisting Ministry of Finance because we failed to appear on time. Let me say that this has not been deliberate. And sometimes when, if you are the finance minister, he has been a deputy minister before, he knows the workload and the schedules. Sometimes when Parliament write to you based on their timetable, it may conflict with your own timetable, and Finance Ministry is not the only ministry that has asked for more time to be able to appear. And so this is one of the reasons. It is never to spite Parliament, and we have nothing to hide.
All right.
But the good thing and the good news is that the Finance Minister, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, did not provide any new information about COVID expenditure. Every figure we put out there was already with Parliament. Every accounting we did in that statement is not a new expenditure. It's something we have already accounted for in various budgets and media budget review, and that is what we put together in that statement. And I'm also happy when you corrected Honorable Blakwa's attempt to say that the first Deputy Speaker threw away a probe, and that is synonymous with making a statement in Parliament. And I know that my senior lawyer Martin tried to assist by saying that when lawyers make mistakes with their emotions, the judge is able to correct. But you see, they are not the same. Judges sit both in law and equity, and sometimes when they see the justice of the matter, they are able to make corrections. If you are a Speaker of Parliament, you're only working with the standing orders, with the laws and conventions of the House. You cannot replace somebody's emotion with a statement or question. So please, this is the difference. Honorable Blakwa is supposed to know that it is not possible if you file a motion. It's not the same as asking for a statement on a matter. And I want to clearly state that
please proceed proceed to the issue of the 17 billion versus the 12 billion.
Let me just go straight to that one. In terms of consistency and honesty, the finance minister has been consistent, and with these figures, the ranking member on finance on the NDC side, Honorable Atufosi, in his contribution to the statement said that the finance minister has been consistent, and that shows his honesty to these figures. First of all, the issue about the 8 billion and 12 billion, it has been clearly explained in the statement. In 2020, in the 2020 budget, an allocation of 15 billion cedis was made for COVID-19, out of which the actual expenditure was, an allocation of 11.1 billion cedis was allocated, out of which 8.1 billion was spent. And this is on actual COVID expenditure. And when you come to 2021, another 4 billion allocation was made and actual expenditure was 3.9. So when you add the 3.9 plus the 8.1 from the previous year, that is when you get 12 billion out of the 15 billion allocation. So the Honorable Ablakwa has to appreciate the difference between allocation and actual expenditures. So there is no conflict there. We, in the 2 years, wanted to spend 12 billion. That's allocation. But the actual, the money that was actually expended was the 12 billion. And so that's the difference. The issue about the school reopening, he says that one figure says 1.1 billion, another figure says 1.9 billion. In this case, it was the same thing. There was an allocation of 1.9 billion. The actual expenditures was 1.1 billion.
John, just a second. Please read it out. Okujetu wants to point something out to you.
I'm not talking about allocations. If you read page 274 of your own 2021 budget, which we approved, utilization is provided as 18.1 billion, not 8.1 billion. So
no, it's not utilized. That's the mistake you are making.
No.
You have referred to. Please relax. Those are. Let me, if I could continue.
Utilization.
Yeah. But John,
the allocation column is different.
Yeah.
The allocation column is different. The allocation was 19.3 billion.
And this is
not the allocation. That is not the allocation.
Page 274.
18.1 billion.
Please. No, the 19 billion you are seeing there is not allocation. The 19, read the topic. You see revenue mobilization. That is the funds that came in as a result.
No, I'm referring to Appendix 12B, performance summary of funding sources.
Please, what is the head?
Allocated amount. Allocated amount. 19.3
It's not allocated amount.
No, please. That's what you have here. You can read
it.
Let the camera capture this. Please proceed.
The 19.3 billion you are seeing there were revenues we received, out of which we spent 18.3, the figure you are seeing there. So those are different things. And I think we announced in the 2021 budget the gap that came in the 2020 budget, where our revenue went down. Yes, I want to see the heading there. Please read the entire thing that we have put there.
So
There's nothing like allocated amount. Read the top, the expression.
Allocated amount. Is there? Allocated amount, 19.3.
No, but this is longer than allocated. Unfortunately, I'm not carrying my
it's Appendix 12B. Performance summary of funding sources.
Thank you.
But so under that, you have funding source, program supported, and allocated amount.
Yeah. Exactly. But
then you have utilization.
To allocated amount.
Please. No, because you are saying that the 18.1 is not the utilization, but that is in the column of the utilization.
Oh, my brother. You see, your problem is your lack of appreciation of what is before you. It is not the figures.
I take strong exception to that. This is your own budget document.
Yes, but you are misreading it. That's the problem.
So tell us what it means. You have put allocation there. You have put utilization under a different column.
But when you were speaking, I was here. I listened to you. I'm saying you are misreading the document before you. That is not it. This is the summary of how much came in and how we expended it. It's not allocated amount. It is not so. You are misreading it. So back to what I'm saying, I'm saying that in the 2021 budget, we told the country that we had a revenue shortfall in 2020. We had a revenue fall of 11.6 billion, okay, because of the lockdown that we experienced. And then there was an unbudgeted expenditure of about 13.6 billion, which added up to about 25.5. I may not be correct in terms of the specific figures, but the total was 25.5 billion, which was the deficit gap that came in that particular year that Ghana needed to raise money to fill it. This is where the two figures that Ablakwa refers to as Appendix 4B and Appendix 4C. Okay, so we needed to look both internally and externally to look at how best we have to raise about 25.5 billion because of COVID. But there's difference between the monies you have raised because there's a COVID problem and how much you have spent on COVID itself. So the accounting we did was on the COVID expenditure proper. So some places, when you add the 8 billion plus the 4 billion, the 3.9 billion, you're going to get 12 billion as the actual expenditures that went in the name of COVID. And when we say that in the name of COVID, it means we are talking about the frontline workers, the vaccines we have to purchase, the PPP or the PPEs, the sanitizers, those direct COVID expenditures. That is what amounted to the 12 billion. But beyond that, still because of COVID, we needed to support the budget because revenues were not coming. And so some of the loans that we contracted, some of the support that came in, which is the summary as given in page 274, okay, it came in to support the budget. And the figures he's talking about, it was the finance minister who put them out. So how do you stand on his figures, which he has brought before Parliament, to tell him that he's lying or he's not disclosing, he's not doing full disclosure to you when he has put it before you in Parliament? So the basis of the claim that we haven't done full accounting and there's inconsistency is not true. The problem is their misreading and misinterpretation of various figures. When it's supposed to be allocation, they take it for actual. When it is actual expenditure, they take it for allocation.
Nobody has done.
And but that's what you are doing.
Nobody has done.
And that's why
document. Why don't you have your own document before you?
Please, when you were talking, I was listening. The ranking member on the NDC side, who understands and appreciates these figures, was the first to commend the finance minister for his consistency.
It's not true.
Because he appreciates that everything he's saying is what he has already put before Parliament. And there was nothing new, okay, that he is hiding. So clearly, I just want to re-emphasize the point that we have nothing to hide when it comes to accountability. In fact, we believe strongly that for us to preserve our democracy, for us as a government to keep the trust of the people, we must account for every penny and pesewa that comes to us for and on behalf of the people. And that's exactly what we have done.
Okay.
The issue about the private funds that were not accounted for, that is a question of law. And even if we needed to go and get all the data to add to the finance minister for his report, it could have delayed further. Already, the propaganda is that he's running away from Parliament. And these are not funds in the consolidated funds. These are funds that have been set aside with board of trustees to manage them. And I'm happy that the Speaker has referred this matter to the two committees of Parliament to further engage.
Great.
So we can invite the managers and governors of those private funds to also come and account.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We take a break here. When we return, we'll hear from Kwame Sapong-Asiedu and Martin Pebu. And of course, we'll share your views as well. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And my guests you've been listening to so far, the Honorable MP for Ejoso and Deputy Minister for Finance, Dr. John Ampontia Kuma, and Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, the Honorable MP for North Tongue and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, Martin Pebu, is a lawyer and rights activist, and joining us just now is Kwame Sapong-Asiedu, pharmacist and fellow Ghana Center for Democratic Development, to share his views on the accounting on the COVID expenditure with us. I've got some of your messages. I'll have to find some other time to read them, but this one's from Echo Moses. Says, is the government rep saying that if any president come to power, he's at will to build anything with the taxpayers' money in support of his religion? So if a traditionalist who becomes a president can convert Accra Sports Stadium into a shrine with the taxpayers' money. Okay, then Abraham says that no finance person will ever classify or capture an expenditure made on an edifice like the cathedral under goods and services. Please, if the deputy minister ever said that, please give him the opportunity to correct himself, because that will be capital expenditure. Goods and services are consumables, stationery, fuel, food, phone bills, cartridges, printers, hiring of experts, etc., and not this one. Kwame, thank you very much. From what you have observed so far in Parliament and the discussions going on the COVID expenditure, what attracts your attention that you would like to talk to us about in some 5 minutes?
Interesting, something. Thanks for having me. I must say that a lot has been said about the numbers. Normally, I'll go through numbers, but one number is key. I just listened to the Honorable Deputy Minister John Kuma, and he said that 12.02 billion was spent on actual COVID expenditure, and that because of COVID, there were constraints elsewhere, and some of the monies had to be spent in budgetary support. But if you look, 25.68 billion was what came in. That is money we are sure came in based on the government's own acceptance. Yeah. And you can look at it, 19.3 billion 2020 and 6.29 billion 2021. Yes. So if you look at that, it means more was spent on budgetary support than actually was spent on COVID. Because if you do the subtraction, you get over 13 billion that is unaccounted for. Because the finance minister has accounted for the 12 billion. And I can see the minority going on and on about whether it's 17 billion, whether it's 19 billion, whether and whether this was allocation, whether this was expenditure. I am going by expenditure. You're telling me you spent 12.02 billion, but you got 25.68 billion, which leaves almost 13.5 billion that hasn't been accounted for. And if you've only accounted for 50% of what actually came in, and you projected the figures, so I don't need to go back into the figures. It's there for all to see. And I'm quite sure you share it on your website. The question I asked myself is, why did the finance minister come to Parliament to account for less than 50% of what we actually got in for COVID? Yeah. Where is the account for the remaining 30? If it's budgetary support, that's fine, but let's know. 2 billion went here, 1 billion went here, 500 million went here. And let the Ghanaian make a decision if that is value for money expenditure. The other thing I'd want to say is when it comes to communication, if you are communicating to the general public and you're the only one who understands the communication, then you are not communicating. Mm-hmm. So if Dr. Kuma is telling us something, and I saw you and Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa tried to haggle with him about the communication they have put out, and he's saying you don't understand it. The question I ask myself is, you are a lawyer and you are an accountant communicating to the Ghanaian at large who doesn't have expertise in that area. It's like me, a pharmacist and a biomedical scientist, trying to explain something about COVID and talking about reproductive numbers and multiplicity rates. I am not communicating. If you cannot bring that information to the level of the average Ghanaian, then I'm sorry, you are not going to convince me. So the simple answer to your question is, with less than 50% accounted for, and the communication being all over the place, and me being expected to have a degree in chartered accountancy to be able to understand it, I still think there's a lot more. And I think this would be unraveled by the parliamentary, the joint committees looking into this any further. That is very important. But moving forward, I think they should learn to communicate to us in layman's language. Because another thing I know as an academic is that when people communicate to you in a language that you don't understand, they simply want to confuse you. When I was a lecturer, that was what I used to tell my students. I'm quite sure some of my students, both in Kenya University and in the University of Portsmouth, are listening to me, and they'll vouch for me. I told you that if I walk into a pharmaceutical chemistry class and I teach and you don't understand, then I deliberately left my house to come to this lecture hall to confuse you because I don't want you to understand. If I did want you to understand, I would communicate in a language that would break it into sound bites that are amenable to you. Okay. That is everything I did with my communication throughout COVID. And I think the finance minister has failed in that aspect, communicating to Parliament. And I think today, Dr. John Kuma hasn't done justice to it as well. So that is broadly what I see.
Interesting. So we can now hope that the bipartisan, both joint committees will also shed further light, since the two of you can't seem to really agree. Now, Martin, and one of my viewers tells me Martin has not spoken in the last 45 minutes. Please, we want to hear from him.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just will reiterate what Dr. Sidu Bekwe just Kwame Sapon just mentioned about the communication. Because Sam, I'm here. I can also at least read literally. I see allocated amount, and Dr. Kuma is telling us that no, we can't see. That is terribly bad. It's terribly bad. And don't forget, no, at least I read some small accounting 1 and 2 in university. And yes, Dr. Kuma is saying that no, what I'm seeing here is not what it is. Oh, it's very insulting. So I think what he has to do is go back. He should have just asked for time. That look, okay, I don't have this document. Let me go back, reconcile, and come back. But you don't put allocated here, and then you keep telling literate people that they can't see what is here. So, but where is the legend? Or even if in accounting, when you do, sometimes you provide notes to the account. So where is the legend, the notes to the account that will show that allocated amount means something different?
There's utilization.
Yes.
Provided
so if you think it's not what we ordinarily should see, definitely, then there should be notes to the accounts in accounting, which will explain what this technical term is. But failure to do so is a waste of our public resources, rather than talking down at Honorable and the rest of us who are contending that we can't see. That's the first one. Then secondly, it's also the case that the matter of going to the trust fund, that it would have delayed. As far as I'm aware, by law, it's even in the Act 1013, that within 2 months after the end of each year, so I'm reading from section 21 of Act 1013, that's the coronavirus trust fund. Within 2 months after the end of the year, the account should be ready. Then they should present same to Auditor General.
We also have a COVID levy.
Excellent. And present it to Auditor General for audit. So at least you could have brought it and say, look, these are the accounts, but they've not finished auditing. And you know, yes, and you know, it's also provided for the finance minister has those powers under the Financial Management Act. You look at sections 77 onwards, reporting requirements of public corporations and state-owned enterprises. So within 2 months after the end, and at any time that the finance minister requests for information, they are to give that information. So what this thing really requires is that common sense would have required that by all means they should have brought the accounts from the coronavirus trust fund. It just makes sense. You don't come and give some and say at one point after he finished, I heard some government officers saying that, oh, they are going to allow the trust fund to also come and explain their accounts, and it looked very disjointed.
Anyway. Interesting, but does look like that's all time will allow us. I was hoping I could get a second to ask you about this, your gatekeeping role at the presidency and how the president has been flying.
Yes. On
all right.
Travels.
Okay. You said, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm being told that everybody is raising their hand to have one more bite, but time has run out of us. On us, and my guests on this show this morning have been Dr. John Ampontia Kuma, MP Ejusu and Deputy Minister for Finance, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa, MP North Tongue and Ranking Member Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. Maybe we should add presidential jets flying, and also Office of President matters. Martin Pebu is a lawyer and rights activist. Kwame Sapong Esiedu is pharmacist and fellow Ghana Center for Democratic Development. Earlier, we had Kweku Ntwibwe-Siakon, who wants to be known only as a Ghanaian citizen, also joining us with very interesting views on the issues. I'm Samson Ladia Nyanini, and my outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. You can find them at Ajiringano Gate, East Legon. You can call them 0200 84 1988. Have a good afternoon.